Hey there, everybody. This is Fraser with the marketing team at Boosted, and I just want to say thanks to everybody for joining us on Halloween. Sorry that Alex and I are not in costumes today, but hopefully you'll enjoy it all the same. Today we're here to talk about how AI is helping asset managers during earnings season, and I just want to take this minute to introduce Alex Cole, who is one of our managing directors of product here at Boosted AI. Without further ado, I'll pass it over to Alex.
Yeah, thanks, Fraser, and thanks everyone for joining us today on this special Halloween. Again, sorry we're not wearing any funky hats. But let me do a quick intro before we dive in. And I started my career in finance. I spent nearly a decade, first as a buy-side journalist and then a cross-asset trader at Scotiabank, which is one of the Canadian large charter banks. And after that, I was looking for a new challenge, so I joined the dark side of tech. I joined Uber pre-IPO, and I spent nearly 4 years there running parts of the Uber Eats business in EMEA. Then I wanted to combine the finance and the tech side of things, and that's where I discovered Boosted. And I've been here for almost 4 years now. And I started out when the company was still fairly small, but we've grown tremendously over that time. And not only have we grown, but also the AI space has been really growing, and the industry in general itself has been booming. So it's been a good time to join that sort of business in which we've seen growth from both the industry and the company itself. What I do here is I'm in charge of part of the product we call Alpha, which is a new type of generative AI product that I'll show later today. So that's about me, but without further ado, let's get into the session. Let me just share my screen because I do have some slides I want to show.
Alex, if you are screen sharing, we're not seeing it yet. Oh, there it goes. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, it just takes a while in technology.
Oh,
So yeah, today we're here to talk about specifically, I'll do a general intro about AI. I'll talk about, how AI has been evolving, how AI has been used in investment management, and what are the use cases for that. And not only how, but like literally how are the investors using it? How are they benefiting from it right now? And I wanted to then focus on specifically on the earnings use case. Like we're in the midst of earnings seasons right now, and having worked at, and having been doing the job before for years, I know how draining it is, and it's at the same time a very important part of the job to get right. So we're trying to facilitate that and make earnings season as uh, painless as possible. I don't know if that's entirely possible, but we're trying. Then I'll show some of the cases of how this works in reality. Um, Summarize everything we talked about, and then take some questions at the end. So AI itself, it's a pretty broad term, but what AI does in general, it teaches the computer to think and learn like a human. And AI has been around for a long time in different forms and different shapes. And like when I started at Boosted, we basically were doing AI and machine learning at that stage already. Um, it's in the simplest forms. What you do in the early iterations is you teach the machine to predict future events based on large amounts of data. And it's basically you train the model and you build a predictive model that attempts to do so. So that was, kind of up until a couple of years ago, that was the cream of the crop of AI was done through those kind of methods. And then lately, generative AI has come into the arena, and we moved into this generative AI domain, so-called LLMs. So these models are trained on large amounts of data, and these models slice and dice the data, label it, organize it, and then it's all done in such a way that these models provide you with a unique response when you give it a prompt. So you ask it something, it analyzes what you've asked it, and then based on the data it has and the data it trained on, it gives you a best response that it can come up with. So now we're sort of in the era where this has been, exploding, and there's been many entrants, starting from the original ChatGPT to now many GPT wrappers that like let you do all kinds of stuff, like even process images, create decks, whatever you name it. So, but what we think, where the industry's going, where we're seeing more and more interest is, we're taking this next step in this evolution. So, sort of these crown jewels of the generative AI are now agentic, now agents. So, so-called agentic AI. And like what that means is basically things like agents that you teach them to think like you, to think on your behalf, and to execute tasks for you, and to achieve specific goals you set out for it. So basically, what you're trying to do is when we say like, we're trying to teach the machine to learn and think like human, we're basically giving you a way to put your brain to the machine. And we think that's the future because that's kind of what you imagine AI would be providing you the most benefit is basically, well, how can I make another version of myself because I'm living on time, but I want to execute all the tasks I still want to do. So these agents are what we think are going to be able to help you with that. So specifically, how then this translates to investment management? Like again, as I said before, in this Gen AI, there's been an explosion in like generative AI wrappers and products and all kinds of industries. Investment management is very unique because I think it faces a set of unique challenges like accuracy, the data needs to be very clean, data needs to be precise because you're literally handling people money, you can't get it wrong. So some of the use cases for asset management that we're seeing, and also cross-referencing these with, well, what are the some time-consuming things that asset managers do? So, as an asset manager, and I remember having to do this in my job, your primary role duties are, you have to find stocks to invest in, you have to screen them, you have to figure out, build models, both write up qualitative and quantitative analysis, and then also you have to prepare for the conversations with the management. You have to make sure you ask the right questions. You have to prepare for these meetings. You have to really dig into what the company is doing. And then with that, also the earnings season is, well, I'll cover later in more detail. That's where you're really digging into the companies and their reports. But mainly, yeah, these four use cases are kind of the ones that we're seeing most of the interest in. And that's where also most of the time savings comes in because these are kind of the most time consuming tasks that people have to deal with because they just involve so much more than basically idea validation can go as surface level or as deep as you can think, and you can just infinitely dig in deeper and deeper on these fronts. So I before I go into the earning thing, I just wanted to also say, well, in this slide, I talked about like is AI used in investment management, but what is the value that it actually unlocks for you? So you may ask, why is this actually important? So I think like one of the big themes in investment management, even when I was working there for a while, was how do you do more with less? The teams are getting smaller, budgets are getting tighter, but demands are going up and up. So what AI is unlocking is the ability to not have to make hard choices between giving up some things and doing more work. Because using these agents and accelerating tasks that you do, you can automate stuff that you no longer then have to worry about. You can do additional tasks that you wouldn't have time to do and dig deeper in areas that you wouldn't have access to before. So, for example, like during earnings season, when you're like literally just focusing on attending these earning calls and doing the diligence updating your models, you can use AI and still have the agents running that would cover stuff like client commentary, doing any watch list monitoring or portfolio monitoring. Like these things are not then going to be fall off your plate and forgotten. You can still do them in an automated way, in a way that really helps you still do your job well. So that's the benefit of AI, like the ability to just scale yourself and scale yourself in such a way that actually makes sense. So going on to the earnings season again, it's I want to specifically focus on this because we're going through the midst of it now. I'm watching my own portfolio, but we can all agree that earnings season is very important, but it's also a bit of a drag and it requires a huge time commitment. At the same time, it's kind of can take up as much time as you let it because you can basically just dive into your coverage stocks and then look into the stocks related to them, and you can look into the other stocks that affect them, and then you can basically do this ad infinitum, and you can just sink in as much time as you want into this earnings that you'll basically never end up going home at the end of the day. So how do we avoid that? Because I think we all can agree that we want to go through earnings season, but we don't want to kill ourselves doing that. But at the same time, so what are the main challenges that happening during earnings? It's like you have massive information overload. especially during the weeks when like the big tech is reporting. You have ton of news flow, ton of reports. Every industry pundit is all over it. So there's ton of stuff to read. At the same time, the accuracy is super important. You have to be extremely fast, but also extremely accurate. And you have to provide these notes to your internal teams, to your clients very, very quickly. So time is money here. You have to act on the insight quickly because maybe you want to trim your positions or add more. So how do we do this in reality? Like, what do we do to make sure that we are able to do things in a way that is accurate, quick, but also find this right balance of like how deeply can we go without having it take up all of our life? So what I'm gonna do is now I'll show you some of the examples of these agents that will potentially help during the earnings season. And I'll focus mainly on four main topics here. So, when you look at the earnings, like basically, if you just think of your workflow as it comes to the earnings season, let's say, I think Apple's reporting tonight. So I want to kind of prep for the call. So I want to pull up my positions. I want to pull up where I am, how I'm set up for that event. Then I want to kind of read what are the recent developments there. I want to prepare a bit. So I want to understand like what do I need to be aware for in the upcoming call? What kind of questions I want to ask the management? And in general, if there's anything that I might have missed that has happened over the past quarter that I want to focus on. Then once the call has happened, well, the earnings are released, I kind of want to do a quick take. Like in my old job, we had to do basically as soon as the earnings come out, I have to send some sort of like top level summary to my entire team just to make sure they're on top of like what's just taken place. So some sort of quick take, and then also I want to update my models and do a more deep dive for a few further digestion. Also, sometimes things happen that like throw a wrench into earnings. Like I'll show one for McDonald's where, for example, uh, earnings were coming out, but like now their quarter pounders are bad. So what does that actually mean for business? How does it affect it? I don't know, but also like I don't have time to find out. So like, how can AI help me do that? And also overarching with all of this is like, how do I do broader industry analysis? How do I make sure that I don't miss anything while I'm looking at each individual company? How would I not miss, any big events that are happening that are actually going to affect the entire spurting season altogether? So how do I handle all these tasks? And there's other ones, obviously, like you can do evaluation, you can do any kind of deep dives you want. But I think like in terms of the workflow for earnings, I feel like this covers most of the big parts, and that's what I want to show in my demo of the actual um, agentic AI. So let me just switch my screen over to the agent, and then I don't know if you have anything to add in the meantime, Fraser, while I do that, but I'll take a second to do so.
Yeah, well, thanks for walking us through kind of the intro to what it is. I mean, certainly a lot of folks on the call don't need to be told that earnings season difficult and time consuming, but I think what we're seeing a lot of excitement from both our clients and some of our prospects is like unlocking more free time. That free time can do a lot. To Alex's point, it can be about uh, analyzing more stuff. It can be also about spending more time at home with your kids. It could be about uh, doing any number of things, but kind of freeing you to have those decisions on what you want to do with your extra time. I see you've got the other thing up, so I will quiet down and let Alex take over again. Thanks very much.
Thanks. Thanks, Fraser. So yeah, like this is our platform. I think probably some of you on the call have seen it, some of you have not. I'm not going to dwell too much on it because I'm not specifically trying to show you any of the very like broad features. I just want to focus on the earning stuff. But just so we're all on the same page, this is what the platform looks like when you come in here. It's a bit of a canvas, but it's not really a blank canvas because we have some predefined analysts that you can run. So some of the predefined prompts. And what I wanted to focus on today is the earning analysis ones that I've created to do the demo. But obviously, I've run these last night so that I have them ready for you. The main idea here is that the difference between these just being basic prompts are that these are all agents. So when you've setting these prompts up, what you can do is you can once you've taught the agent and how to operate, you can set it up so that it runs in the background. It gives you notifications if anything changes. It tells you what's going on in the world that might affect your initial report that you got. But let me just show you an example. So I was talking about in the intro about the steps you go through in the earnings workflow. So one of them was preparing for the earnings call. So Apple is reporting tonight. I pretend I don't know what's going on, but I'd be a pretty horrible analyst if I didn't know what was going on in the one of the big stocks. But pretend I'm not. And again, so we're on the same page. This field here on the left is how you communicate with the agent. You tell it what to do. You can set up a variety of tasks. You have your list of your agents that you're looking at, and I have a bunch of random ones here. And then on the right, you have the output that it gives you. And here, what I'm just talking about earlier, you have these updating functionality, which is, let's say, when I'm preparing for earnings call for Apple, I need to do this every quarter, basically. Or maybe I actually just want to do it like, twice a quarter because I just want to sort of pre-prepare and be extra prepared and see if there's anything happened in advance. I can set this up in such a way that this agent will just run it for you and it'll tell you, it'll rerun this analysis every, whatever, 6 weeks. It'll tell you what's changed. It's all what's what you need to look at. And that's kind of like where we're talking about agentic AIs of ability to automate tasks for you and make sure nothing slides by the wayside if you are busy doing other things. So yeah, like I ran this Apple earning call prep report. What are some things that we have to be aware of when we're coming into earnings? Well, first is like risks. Like, what are the biggest things I need to be aware of? And here we have the summary of bolded parts. Macro environment, privacy, security, supply chain concerns, etc. And later we go into a bit more detail. It's like everything here sort of builds up upon itself. Then you go into the summary of the key things to monitor. AI integration development is a big thing. Like I just got a new iPhone 16, for example, and I've been playing with the AI features, which are some of them are okay, but I found it cool to you can actually able to remove stuff from pictures now. So I think that's actually kind of interesting. But anyway, like the Apple Intelligence has been all the talk for Apple lately, and I think this came up as like a first thing you need to be aware of. And I think one cool thing is that like if you're using something like ChatGPT or any other LLMs, traditional ones, they don't have access to most recent information. Whereas what we do, and what I think is very important for you as an analyst, is to be able to kind of show your work and prove it. So we have these kind of cool way of viewing all the sources where the data comes from. So, for example, for this Apple Intelligence, there's been a bunch of articles that focus on that, and see this is where like sort of like scalability comes from because even though there's been a million articles about this, the agent is able to read all these articles, summarize them, rank them based on their reputation and so on, and come up with a quick take on like what this actually means, and then it just combines all this into one bullet point that you actually need to care about. It does that, these references are available everywhere. And references are things like, news articles, but see like something here is like actually pulling from the exact call transcript from the past or from the filings, and it highlights here exactly which part was used to generate this output. So I think that's like actually one of my favorite features because uh, I need to make sure that like this work checks out, and sometimes I want to dig deeper and understand a bit better, and I want to be able to go to that source. So now that I feel like we're sort of on the same page here as to how this works, I'll just go down the list here. So again, preparing for the earnings, we have major catalysts that we need to be aware of. And I kind of was just mentioning early intelligence rollout, and there's a bunch of like sources where that comes from. Product pipeline is always important, so it's highlighted here. And again, it's referenced like where the pipeline comes from. Going down the list, what are the promises Apple made? Have they, fulfilled those promises before? It's kind of important, as you know, with earnings, it's like all about expectations versus the reality. And that's kind of like where that's highlighted. What are the things, some of the things that potentially can predict future performance? So, a lot of the times it's the analysis, the view of the analysts, and sorry. So it's something that analysts might have said in the news and then expressed skepticism about. So how do we actually combine that with what were these past predictions that were made and how they panned out in the future? And I think like most importantly is like how do I then turn all this analysis and research into when I'm going to this call, what do I need to actually drill management about? And I think what is really important is like sometimes when I listen to the earning call, it's actually more interesting to me like what the top analysts are asking, how the management is responding to it versus what the company is actually saying. Because obviously when the CEO comes out on call, they're always going to tell you the rosy stuff. And then what are the analysts drilling into? That's actually where the for me is some of the interesting information that comes from, where some of the interesting information comes from. So here we have, first derivative question. So for example, let me skip forward to like, for example, yeah, we've been talking about this AI integration. Um, so question about AI integration, the ecosystem, how it might potentially affect the quantitative results of the company. And then you have the secondary question, which is like, how do I even dig deeper into this area? So you're always kind of prepared to go deeper and deeper on the issues that are faced by this company. So this is like a pretty good start, a pretty good script if you want to, drill the management about what is happening in the call. And you can obviously adjust it as you're listening to the call and pick the questions you actually care about. So, so that's for the prep, and I'll quickly go through the other ones. Like I know Google reported last night, and I have a position myself, so like I made this agent because I was kind of curious about what's happened. And as I kind of said before, as an analyst at a bank, like first thing I had to do was basically blast out this quick summary to my floor about like what's happened. So I quickly listened to the Google earning calls and I just asked it to summarize the call. And it gives me this like top line bullet point takeaway of like, here's what happened in earnings. And I can quickly send it up to my group and again, reference all this, my work, where it came from, especially like the very last call that has happened. And then like everybody has an idea of, what's happened on the earnings. And then later I need to, update my models and I update my analysis. So like I have a bit of a more deeper dive into this where it breaks down the revenues, breaks down the revenue sources, breaks down the costs, does some quick valuation and expenses, so that really, I can sort of have at a glance all the necessary quantitative information that I need to care about, but also I can always dig into any of these areas more and more. So I think like the main takeaway here that I want you all to have is that this is all designed to not kind of replace what you're doing in the earnings, but it's just to let you do more with it. So like when you're listening to an Apple call, before you would it's such a big stock. You would look at all the sell side cover, especially if you're buy side guy. If you're sell side, you really need to get into it more. But then like if you want to look at all the related companies for Apple, and I kind of said that before, you can go as deeply as you want. You can literally spend like probably a month looking into it. But with this, you can build a very quick summary of, let's say, all the companies are relevant to Google, all the companies are relevant to Apple, and just find the most important tidbits of information that you need to look at. So you're always staying on top of what is actually important for the company you care about, but do so without, boiling the ocean and doing a ton of work yourself. So that's, I think, the most important takeaway here is that just the scalability of doing more with less is what the main benefit of all this is. And really quickly to conclude, I will show two more things. Like I talked before about like, let's say you're prepping for the McDonald's call, like I showed you Apple before, but there are like, what was it, Big Macs? No, quarter pounders are contaminated. And I wasn't expecting that. I don't know anything about the issue. So I quickly ran this agent that like told me about it. And specifically what I did, I asked it like, well, given this contamination issue that's happened, what do I need to drill management about to make sure they've addressed it? And it gave me a quick summary of all this, E. coli problem. It said that, they're actually starting to sell the burgers again, which I had no idea they'd start doing. I thought they were pulled. But, that aside, it came up with a number of questions and things that I need to be really paying attention to figure out that the impact of this event. So financial impact, uh, these sections here about the qualitative impact. Basically, if I were to coming in off of this into this completely cold, I'd be able to at least cover anything I need to know to make sure this issue is dealt with, resolved, and what the impact it had on my models. And then lastly, when you're looking at the industry overall, like I'm going through all these earnings, I'm looking at, specific coverage companies, but sometimes I may miss, sort of like what's happening in the background. What is the entire like earnings season showing us? And then what I did here is I ran this report for S&P 500 that just tells me what are the patterns in this earnings season, what the patterns in the earnings season are. So, it talked about major macroeconomic patterns that are affecting the current earnings season, and we all sort of familiar with them, but it's good to have them at a glance, and also make sure that like there's something that we did not miss. So geopolitical tension, like inflation, election, renewables, whatever, everything is sort of captured here. And then you go down the list, and it tells you what industries it affects, what companies are impacted, and so on and so forth. But again, it's like building up on um, deeper and deeper as you go down the report. So again, like the main takeaway here is that like even though you might be familiar with this stuff, and some of this is all over the news, once you train this agent and you kind of set it to run all the time for you, you will basically just be getting a notification every like week or every month or so that just tells you, hey, here's some new things that are happening that you need to be aware of. And you can just skim through that and make sure you pick up on something that you might have missed otherwise. And I think that's the biggest benefit of doing all this. So that's it for my demo of the agents. And just to, I guess, I'll just leave us in Fraser here. I'll stop sharing my screen. But to recap, you know, AI is really developing it's really moving forward quite at a fast pace. We think it's moving towards the direction of these agents because, basically they give you a way to upload your brain to the machine, and to just give you your time back and let you do more with less, but at a quality that you would expect from yourself. And I've shown you some examples of the stuff we can do with earnings, but basically um, this is possible to do for other use cases within the investment management industry, and it can really help you scale what you do across all the aspects of your job. So back to you, Fraser. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alex. So since I've got you here, maybe you could put up that QR code in case anybody has any questions that they want to talk about us with us more. Just to kind of summarize, I think that basically it's the same premise that a lot of people are talking about with AI, that you're able to do more with less. I think any person that's tried it is seeing that in real life. Certainly, me from a marketing side, I see that using AI is making my work life a lot simpler and a lot faster uh, to do. So I think there's reducing people's having to make decisions on, do I want to do this or do I want to do that? It's kind of allowing people to do everything all at once. And I think that's a really exciting new opportunity for folks. So let me just kind of, as we're in the last few seconds here, run in through some questions with you, Alex. A lot of the questions are about use cases. I think you kind of covered a handful of those in the beginning. So just want to reiterate those. It's about idea generation, some of the stuff around advanced stock screening, doing DDQ type stuff, and of course, earnings season. And here's a question from somebody: how has AI developed in the financial sector over the last year?
Um, yeah, it's a good question. So over the last year, sorry, I'm sharing your barcode, by the way,
Yes,
right?
thank you. Yes,
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah. So over the last year, we're seeing more and more like just entrance in the AI space in general. And I think how the AI has developed in financial sector specifically, and maybe take a step back from like specifically money management, we're seeing more and more people just thinking about how to incorporate AI into the rest of the stuff, like compliance processes, business teams, sales. So I think we're just seeing more penetration into other areas of the business. And I think more and more what people are coming to realization into a realization is that like the most important thing is, how do I make AI to give me answers that I care about? And this is kind of what I keep like hammering on about putting brain to the machine. When I'm asking a AI specific question, I want it to answer like I would answer if I were doing that kind of research. So I think that has been like the focus of a lot of development recently, and that's what more and more we've been seeing off.
Very nice. I think we have maybe time just for one quick one at the end here. The question is about, do you have sell side research incorporated into the summaries?
Yeah, so we do, and I think I was showing in some of the stuff that there was. The way we do it is, because self-site research might be private and something you might care about some of it more than others. you can basically upload your own sales side research you care about into the platform, and it will, take those reports, summarize them, and use them as those references I was showing you.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. We wanted to keep it at half an hour today on a very spooky Halloween day. uh, really appreciate everybody's time here. I think, again, just to reiterate one last time, AI across the board, certainly earnings season, but many other asset management workflows is really just about saving people time, automating these workflows for you, allowing you to kind of choose your own adventure in terms of what you want to spend your time focusing on, uh, and unlocking that sort of power for yourself. So thank you again, everybody, for joining, and thank you, Alex, so much for walking us through these great use cases.
Thanks, Fraser. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.